It's real funny.
It's real funny. Nick, happy New Year. I almost said happy birthday. Happy New Year. It's 2025. How are you, sir?
Hey, it's good, man. Did you having a good New Year's?
I am. I already feel like the year's fully underway. It's only the day we're recording this. This will drop on the whatever it is, I think, 4th of the year. But yeah, man, I'm always excited about the beginning of a year because most of us already start doing things like a few weeks before the year starts because that's just how most of our brains works when you want to get a lot of
Yeah,
things done. But when the year officially starts, you want to hit the flash kind of button where you just run off, right?
100%.
So let's start with this. I'm actually going to give you the option here. Do we start today's show with one of two things? Do we start with what you're calling, and I hadn't heard this word in a long time, which is the hardo of the week, or do we start with a real news story first to kind of cleanse everybody's palate?
Hey, let's start with a real news story because
Okay, fine, fine.
we got to let the hardo of the week marinate a little bit.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, so I thought this was interesting, and I wanted to kick it off because we've done, a fair amount of in between ICE versus EV talk on all the podcasts that we've done, which is
Yeah.
episode 8, and all the clips that go out on a daily. But this one came across me this morning, and it's Tesla confirms their deliveries for 2024. And it was supposedly down way below what they had predicted. So 495,570 was the final number for the full year. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on their sales
Is
being
that
down.
for the whole lineup? I thought that they definitely are in the millions of cars, correct?
So it says the Tesla TSLA released its production and delivery results for the fourth quarter and full year of 2024 today. The automaker confirmed having delivered 495,000 electric vehicles, way below expectations and its own guidance from just 2 months ago.
What was their guidance? Do you know?
Analyst census, let me see. Fourth quarter was 507 vehicles delivered. The street predicted or expected Tesla to fall short. Let me see. It doesn't really tell me here yet. I didn't get to the full
So
number.
was that on their quarter?
Let me see. Confirming that it produced 495,000 vehicles and delivered 495 vehicles in Q4. Yes.
Yes. So, I think one of the things we have to realize is the fourth quarter's kind of a tough quarter, right? Also, it's a tough quarter, yeah, because I think they're planning on selling 1.8 million, for the whole year, something like that. Or they did, say that that's kind of what they're trying to do. It looks like they've dropped, close to 1.5%, 1.1% for the year.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about this, and this is not Tesla exclusively. This is kind of everybody is. We're coming out of this very highly profitable 4.5 year period, right? Basically, or I should say this, 3.5 really, really highly profitable years. And then this last year, we've kind of seen things normalize a little bit for the automakers and the dealers and those kind of things, right? So I think when you look at Tesla, you look at it as they're a car company. Yes, they build EVs. Yes, that's what their base of their car is, but they're just an auto manufacturer, right? And I think what you take from some of these numbers of, hey, we're down 1% or we're down 2%, in the scheme of things, that's not down very much. You got to worry about kind of where Stellantis is at or Nissan's at, where they got these massive, massive problems. I think here's what's amazing about Tesla. They're delivering a lot of cars. That's number one, something we need to understand. It's a very young company in the auto business, no matter what anybody says. You're talking about generations. I think you're on the third generation of Toyota, owner or operator or CEO in the family at this point. I mean, these car companies are around a long time. I think what Tesla does is pretty crazy when you think about how young of a company they are, but also we know that they're committed to Model 3 is the most American-made car in the world at this point. So I think with all of this, it doesn't matter what people think of the person running the company, Elon himself. It's painting a picture to me that 2025 is going to be a little bit rocky for automakers because it's gotten rockier as the year of 2024 went on, and now we're in 2025. I think people need to be prepared that we're getting back to normalcy here.
Yeah, we actually have a run of clips. It's so funny you say that haven't even dropped yet today, but they're in the bank to kind of go out today. It's about that. We talked about that last week. And funny enough, also, as I was just hitting record on this, somebody had commented on the Instagram page, which, by the way, at Clutch Culture Pod everywhere. You guys are lighting up the Instagram. YouTube's doing well. TikTok all of a sudden had a little bump again, talking about minivans, and then again crickets. So we don't know
Eh,
what's going on over there.
yeah,
But there was a gentleman here that said, I was in the car business and I lost a comment because we get so many. I'm just saying, you guys are
yeah.
really lighting it up. But essentially, he was in the car business as a broker and then just ran out. He said, it's unbearable for the consumer right now. Do you think that
Yep.
improves? Is that a good statement? What do you think?
Well, when you talk to brokers and dealers, there's one thing that affects the car business in more ways than anything right now, which is interest rates.
Mm,
Right? It's a high interest rate world, and sooner or later the back was going to be broken of the consumer. Like they were just going to say, "I'm out of money. I can't." We joke about the $1,200 a month Tahoe, right? You're going to get to this point where the consumer is just going to tap out and say, "I don't have any more money," and it's going to happen very, very quickly and rapidly, which is kind of what we saw the second half of this year. It started at the beginning of the year, end of 2023, where we were starting to see cracks in everything. But I think what everybody, especially this guy, the broker or dealers, have been saying to me behind the scenes is, I don't have customers that want to spend the money. And I made this comment on one of the Porsche videos, which it's nice to see you realizing exactly what I've been saying about the change of the
keep
Porsche, the
going.
loud Porsche people. So here's one of the things that I'll say. What did you just
Hey,
put on?
hey, no, keep going. I'm wearing this. We both started catching arrows on the same video, but for different reasons. So I'm killing two birds with one stone right here, right?
So
Astros arrows, Porsche arrows. Keep going, sir.
okay, so one of the things that we have to realize is that a $50,000 vehicle 5 years ago was getting financed at a certain cost, let's say 1%, 2%. That same vehicle may be getting 7.5%, 8% financing now. And we're seeing more double digit financing, 10 to 13% than we've
Jeez.
seen in a long, long time. Now, again, we're talking about the used car market. The new car market, it can still be pretty high, even with good credit. And so I think that, you know, what nobody talks about with interest rates is this is what raising the interest rates is supposed to do. It's supposed to slow down this consumerism at un you can't keep those levels up that we had from 2020 to essentially the beginning of 2024. You can't keep that up. And so
Yeah.
this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to slow this down.
Right, right. I want to stay on that subject, or actually want to come back to it. And the reason I put this on, you brought up Porsche, and as soon as you did that, it was going to trigger me bringing up the Hardo of the week. So we have to jump to this, okay? We love cars. Basically
Love
anything
them.
with wheels, right? If you can
Yeah.
drive it, you want to drive it, you want to have some sort of experience with it, even if it's just a take because you saw it or what have you. I got to bring this down now. But when we started talking about the GT2 RS not being the best daily in the world, you upset some hearts,
Oh,
okay?
buddy.
And then I started taking shots because every Astros fan should piss all the way off. I said, "Whoa, I didn't even say anything. I have one on my shelf, man. And here's my track day, badge. Like I love the Porsches and the GT cars
Same.
and
Hey,
whatnot.
by the way, same for
Of
me.
course, of course. So I was sitting there replying to some of these guys, obviously just trying to be as positive as possible because a lot of them, they were hardos, and I hadn't heard that word in so long. Like I don't know what made you say that. I don't know if it's just like before my time, but I don't
No,
remember
I,
hearing that
I
in a long
I
time.
think we have this. People overuse the words keyboard warrior.
Yes.
Which I think is what is the best to describe it. And I think it just gets overused. But I mean, Hardo of the week is it just has a ring to it. And like I said, we're in this world where 80% of people commenting are good people.
Yes.
They're providing something to the conversation, even if it's a disagreement, which I implore everybody, if you disagree, man, let us know. Give us a comment. What did we miss? Why do you think something different? But then you got this 10 to 20%. And you and I know a lot of content creators, they basically bow out of, interaction because of
Mhm.
this 10 to 20%.
Yes.
I actually think we got to go the other way in culture today, and we got to lean into it and, do segments like this, like Hardo of the Week.
For sure.
To me, Hardo of the Week is just the apt name because it's like, you don't like a loud car? You're a you-know-what.
You
And I'm
sit
like,
down while you pee.
sit down while you pee. It's like, okay, Hardo, relax, man. We're shooting the shit about cars. Now, the funny thing is that people don't know about Rob and I am around some of the toughest guys in the world in my business. Literally world champions and people in mixed martial arts. And, you're heavy in that community.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, you know who doesn't talk about that? The heavyweight champ of the world. They don't do that on the internet. Just an FYI.
Dude, it's so funny you say that because I honestly didn't even think about that. But you're right. It's some of the and this is such a cliche at this point because of Rogan. Obviously, he's like the king of this kind of stuff, having these people on shows and obviously being like the face of the UFC. But when I had a cryotherapy business years ago that I co-started and ran daily for a long time, for a couple years, and we started getting really good with a lot of the athletes in the Houston community and through other friends and whatever. But we'd have people in there like Derek Lewis was in there all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Derek is a giant, right? But he is
Literally.
literally a giant. But he is the coolest guy. Just obviously, if you follow him on Instagram, it's just jokes. He's very soft spoken in person. But other killers like that, man, like they were always the coolest dudes. And yet here I am talking about cars with you, and these guys would make it seem like they would stomp on Derek Lewis or any of the other killers who would come through my.
Yeah,
my
they're gonna take Ngannou out.
Exactly
right.
right. They're gonna see Derek roll up in his Lambo and be like, "That piece of shit, you didn't get the." And Derek's be like, "What the hell did you just say?"
100%.
Or anybody else that rolls through Main Street Boxing or any of the Henzo Academies. It's just like those are the coolest guys. And it was odd because I was sitting there. What I was going to get to too is that as I'm replying to some of these guys, and usually in cool responses, I just had to think to myself, like, there's no way. And I told Nick this maybe off the podcast that, like, having been behind the scenes of like political content for a long time, these people some of them are worse. I'm just saying, like, it's blowing my mind how you offended or triggered some people just based off of an opinion from stories of wealthy people that you just wanted to share.
Yeah, and by the way, some of the biggest collectors in the world.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I mean, we have car collections we're responsible for that people have 100 cars, that are, cool dudes, and they are car guys. Okay.
Yeah.
They're not just trying to park money, and that's the other thing. Well, most rich guys, it's like, guys, I'm in the collection world. That's what I've been doing for 15 years. Another, 2 or 3 years when I didn't own my company. I mean, you're getting to the point of 18, 19 years of in the collection world. I don't just say this stuff to say it. I mean, that's just not how you and I are. And when these people talk, they're like, I don't enjoy that. And we have 2 or 3 or 4 people who own all these cars kind of say the same thing. We share it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't daily it. That doesn't mean you don't enjoy it. That doesn't mean that we're making some statement like, hey, it's a crap car. Never made any of those statements. And then you have people just come in and they're just swinging.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a guy at the bar that just starts throwing haymakers in a bar fight. It's like, relax, guy. We're just having a couple beers. And I saw you get to that point where you go, hey, man, can we all just relax? We're just talking cars here.
It's so funny when the people that also have, because the best part, I will say, because you almost say, who do you give this? I want to do like an award of the week, but this particular week, as we were starting it, it's either I'm the foremost expert in Porsches in the world guy, or I'm my brother took it to the track 2 hours away and then drove it home guy, or there's just so many of them, right?
Oh, I drove it 2 hours in the snow each way, and then we went to the track, and then it's like, okay, Hardo of the week, man.
Drive through.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
the best
for you.
daily in the world. It's like, dude, it's just
then
an
you have
opinion.
the other ones that are like,
and by the way, I have a lot of people DMing me saying, hey, man, love the content. We have a ton of great commenters. I want people to continue to comment because you know what? I'm learning from some of these people. They're like, hey, man, this is my experience. We've had a lot of guys say, hey, I own them, but I also have a Ford truck, and I'd rather drive that every day. And here's the reasons why. And this is the best way I've used my car. And it's like, guys, this is all about bringing that barber shop that's gone away mentality back to car culture, where you used to just sit around and shoot the shit about cars, and you'd bust your buddy's balls and be like, dude, that car, I don't like it, or I drove it and that car sucks and I don't like it. It was like, this was all in fun. And again, I get it that sometimes these clips are made in a way that, we want you to engage with them, but also remember there's a whole context of conversation that you have to remember these clips are coming out of.
Yeah, and it is in the effort to get you to listen to the whole show, which has also been well received on the audio portion, not just the clips. But, this reminds me, the very first time I rode in a Hellcat. Do you remember the first year of the Hellcat? Was it 15, 16, something like that?
That sounds about right.
So I had just opened this facility, and I had I had a good buddy who turned into an investor. Just pick it up. He was excited as hell, right? I rode in it. I genuinely loved it. Thought it was cool. Shortly after that, had to have been that same year, he picked up a Model S, like picked up a Plaid, right? Way faster than the Hellcat. Let's just be honest. He was even
Yeah.
more excited about this Tesla. But I just still to this day can't get behind the full EV experience. And he was convinced within the same year, he was convincing me the Hellcat was the best car ever, and then that the Tesla was. So we get in the Tesla. Of course, it just throws you back into the seat. And I'm like, dude, I think the Hellcat's better. And he's like, what the fuck did you just say? This car's way like he got so mad. But of
Yeah.
course, I'm just like messing with him.
Yeah. Dude,
But he got it too.
and I say this all the time, this is what has been missing. Guys are supposed to have fun and argue and bust balls over cars. That's what we all do. If you have car buddies, that's what you do.
Yeah.
So that's what we do on the podcast while throwing in some anecdotes from very, very big car collectors or dealers or manufacturer people that we know. Like, this is supposed to be like, hey, let's share some information, but also realize that you're going to like things that I don't like and vice versa. I got a new daily coming that probably 90% of people wouldn't drive, but I like it and I want to experience it. And if I end up hating it, guess what I'll do? I'll sell it and get another one. It's not this big a deal.
I can't wait to hear about that experience because I wasn't, and to this day, I'm never going to admit I knew a whole lot about the Land Cruiser legacy as far as the series and whatever. I know you do, and you were a fan of them, and that's what you started looking for when it wasn't, between that and the Raptor. But I've become more of a fan of, as I've gone through some of the older stuff and what you ordered, and then what obviously is coming to the States now as of this, last couple of months in 2024. And I really want to like it. I really want to because I like the look of it. I like how beefy and stout it is, the whole thing. But there's something about Toyota interiors, and you and I have talked about this, even in modern Toyotas. Like you either like it or you don't, or you make do because you like the car as a whole. But like the one you ordered, the 2003, right?
Yeah.
Do you like the in, out, the whole package what was it?
No, I mean, look, this is what everybody, if you're ever going to tell the truth about Toyota, if Toyota would just go hire the people from Audi and say, design our interiors.
Right.
This is basically what Genesis did, right? So Genesis just basically said, we're going to hire the guys from Bentley and they're going to make the interior of our car, right? That's what Hyundai went and did with the Genesis brand. If Toyota were to do that, I think you'd start talking about prices that made a lot more sense as they sit today. But no, Toyota, Honda's been in this world as well. They put a lot of their eggs in the basket of engine dependability, so that's where their money is invested, right? Although the new Honda Accord, I think, got released, the new design, I think this past week, it looks interesting, but I think there's no question that Toyota's always, for me, been underwhelming on the interior of their vehicles. Now the new LX600 looks like, hey, we're stepping it up, we're understanding. But you're also talking about a $125,000 car, right? So, but Lexus, that's why I've always been partial to Lexus and the Toyota brand, because it was a tad bit more elevated, but it still was never to the point that I thought, just go hire the Audi guys and fix this thing.
The people that are like, well, now that it's no longer bloated and for the wealthy, it's, a better vehicle. I'm like, those comments, I love those comments too. Like, do you hate money? Like, do you hate people that have money? Like, do you not want to be one of the people that, could have gotten this?
Oh, you're in the same boat. I just don't have that mindset. And by the way, I don't care what anybody drives. If you're somebody that loves Civic SIs, I'm going to cheer you on. If you're somebody that wants to go own a Bugatti and have the money to, I'm going to cheer you on. Yeah. I just don't have that whole... I guess the words are class warfare with cars. Look, man, whatever you can, as long as you take pride in it, we're kind of on the same page. Like, love it, enjoy it, move on with your life.
Yeah, like I'm going to Houston tomorrow, like early in the morning with the wife. She's got some things to do, and I got some things to do. And we're taking her car this time, and I'm kind of excited because I like driving my GTI everywhere. I think it's comfortable. It's got all the things I need for the time being until I get something fun that I can really romp on. And she's got the CX-5, right? The 2024 CX-5. Yeah. I think it's so good. I love driving that thing. It's cush, it's comfortable, it's ergonomic. It's got, heated steering wheel because it's cold right now in Tech. For us, it's cold. I don't know what it's like in Vegas, but 40 is cold here.
Yeah, no, it's gotten cold here. I mean, it looks like, and by the way, the weather looks like we're about to get some real winter around the U.S. But I look at this, man, and I say the same thing. I've always thought Mazda wasn't appreciated.
Yeah.
Mazda's been doing a great job for a very long time. It's just branding, who's in charge of making Mazda cool, marketing. I think they've always lacked in that department, but anybody that gets in a modern Mazda, I think has kind of the same, like, oh, they're doing good stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I think Mazda really kind of stands for right now.
They're finally redesigning the CX-5, by the way, too. For those that are interested, I know I've mentioned it a couple times, and people in the comments of when we talked about SUVs and family cars, the minivan, exchanges in there. So I'm interested to see what it looks like, the final product, because they've always looked great. Like if it stayed like what are cars? Obviously, we can think of some like Volkswagen, Porsche, where they stayed the same for so long. Like the same thing
Yep.
happened to Mazda. They're so good looking. Like why would you change it drastically?
Yeah, no, and I don't think they're in line to do a drastic change. Maybe they end up doing it, but they don't need one. They just need
Yeah.
to modernize some curves, maybe do something with the front grille a little bit, add some little things here and there. But yeah, they've done a good, solid job of design, right? They're not going to wow you, but you're going to go, that's a good looking car. And I think for a brand like Mazda, that's exactly where you should sit.
Yeah, and speaking of, you brought up Genesis earlier, right? So the Hyundai, Kia, those brands have had like a lot of just it's a roller coaster of a history through those brands. But here recently, when they brought in, was it Albert Bierman? Was that his name? The BMW M guy to
Yeah,
head
but
like
look,
the end.
that was kind of that's that's been a little bit of an underwhelming, you know, thing. And I think, on the Haggerty channel, they did a takedown of that,
Oh
in the
yeah,
first infancy of that, of the driving experience. Genesis fits in a weird spot for me because I don't understand how anybody pays $100,000+ for a Hyundai product.
right.
I can't. I mean, the design, they've done a great job. So I kind of call Genesis the lipstick brand because they did everything to put lipstick on the fact that they have a considerable amount of engines blow up. You can go to any Hyundai dealership at any time, and engines are still blowing up much more regularly than most brands. I get it. Some brands or all brands have problems, but Kia and Hyundai especially seem to have a lot of still engine trouble that should have been sorted out by this point. So they've done an unbelievable job with design. Unbelievable job on the interior and the fit and finish and the materials. But it's still a Hyundai engine product, and they haven't really stepped back, in my opinion, and said to themselves, how do we put that 5 or 10 year plan together to go spend billions of dollars of making an ultra luxury brand from head to toe? But there's no doubt they're on the right path design wise. There's no
Right.
question.
We were talking about speaking of these bigger SUVs. There was a listener that wanted your opinion on the new Cadillac stuff, and I don't remember why. Oh, we were talking about the new QX80 and those bigger SUVs and how you loved it, at SEMA and all
Yep.
this. And then they were looking at that, and then I personally haven't looked at the new Cadillac stuff coming out. Do you have any thoughts on new Cadillac SUVs coming
Yeah,
out?
so we have a lot of executive ordering, a lot of, we have a lot of casinos here and people that start ordering big SUVs at the end of the year. We're still seeing a huge amount of those people order the Navigator Black Label. That's still what they prefer. The new Cadillac stuff, by the way, nobody's doing sedans that impress me like Cadillac. The CT5V Blackwing, I've said it on here. If they weren't crazy expensive, if there wasn't, a markup when every time I try to call or whatever, best sedan, I'd buy one. Just not something I want in my family at this or need, I should say. But love them. SUV wise, I have not liked Cadillac stuff for quite some time. I like how it looks. I'm not impressed with the experience. I don't like everything about it. And when you're in that world, I just think Navigator Black Label does it better right now.
Mm.
Remember, Cadillac passed Navigator for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When Navigator went into this redesign, if you sit in the seats and you look at the infotainment and you think of the experience, and look, I'm only going off of what I'm watching clients, what they end up picking, because remember, we'll send them a bunch of big SUVs from dealerships and say, hey, ride around in this for a week, ride around in this for a week, ride around in this for a week, and then we'll go about putting the order together. We just ordered 5 more Navigator Black Labels,
Dang, that good.
and that guy had a chance to buy whatever he wants, because actually this guy For those that don't know, I mean, about my business, one of the things this guy will do is 2 of those will be bulletproof. And so, like, he's going to invest a lot of money in 2
Yeah.
of the 5 vehicles, as expensive as it is. And so, one of the things I'll say is I just kind of go with what's the best at the time. And I still think it's hard to beat Navigator Black Label right now.
One thing, one comment or two type of vehicles in the comment section that I hadn't really seen a lot of until just I think yesterday was, and it was in the Land Cruiser conversation. Just get a Defender was one, and then just get a Land Rover was the other, which is kind of
Yeah, like a Range Rover. So here's the deal. I'm a huge Range Rover guy. I think if you're going to go buy new, you got the money, you can't beat a Range Rover. Range Rover does luxury SUV better than anybody, in my opinion. There's a reality to them that you want to own them new, you want to keep them 12, 24, max 36 months, and you want to go get another one. And I got plenty of clients to do that. We take care of more Range Rovers than anything in my business.
really.
Point blank, by a long shot. We do a lot of autobiographies. We do a lot of that stuff. And so we're around them all the time. I love them. You're not going to find a bigger Defender fan. I go all the way back. I love those 90s Defenders. I love Defenders. We did a full restoration on a Defender. We can get into that another time. An old one, Coyote engine put in it, the whole thing. Turns out we had some registration issues because of some things that happened here in Nevada, but we'll go into that another time. The Defender's the same thing, man. If you can go get and keep it for a year or two, it's going to be a great vehicle. They still have a sunroof issue in Land Rover Defender. By the way, the sunroof issue in Land Rover has been going on my entire life. Like that's just the name of the brand. And so I'm a huge fan of Land Rover. I was a huge Discovery guy, when they were really invested, like some of those Safari Discoveries and those. I love those square body Discoveries. If I could find a low mileage one for a good price and just accept the repair bills, I love them. So yeah, man, I love the new Defender. Again, buy it new, or you got to buy it 2 years, 3 years old and have a crazy extended warranty on it. That's the only way to feel good about those when you buy them used.
Where does that in marketed vehicles go? Like after that 12, 24, 36 months, and then somebody trades it in or sells it to upgrade, where does the rest of the market go?
Huge depreciation.
Yeah.
And then usually smart consumers that are really knowledgeable about those brands, they buy a big extended warranty. So the price goes up pretty considerable, because those extended warranties aren't cheap to keep on those vehicles because remember, they know what's coming.
Yeah.
The dealers, the repair shops, everybody knows what's coming. And so when I look at those vehicles, I've always wanted them to just get dependable. I've always just been like, man, if they figure it out, because like we have some Range Rovers that some people have kept for a long time, but they only have like 40,000 miles on them because they're just an extra, one of the 10 cars they have, and it just kind of, putzes around town and doesn't get a lot of use. But I think there's anybody that says luxury SUV, top to bottom, who's always done it really well. Range Rover's at the top of the list, meaning design, when you get in it, how you feel driving it around, all those types of things. So yeah, man, we have some crazy autobiographies. We got some SVs. We got some crazy ones we take care of all the way down to the base model. I love them all. So I mean, it's just you got to be very prepared if you keep them what is coming.
Yeah. So it's not something you're necessarily going to keep and buy, or rather, I mean, I guess you could keep it for 10 years, like a regular consumer car, but maybe only if you have fat stacks of cash.
Yeah, we see a lot of business owners, right? There's some write-off things to the size of Range Rover. There's some tax implications and all that kind of stuff, and so that's who we see dominate in our world. Is usually people that own a business or have lots of money, or you don't even necessarily have to have billions or millions. I'm just saying. Yeah. There's some tax implications to the weight of those vehicles. And I'll say it I just wish they were more dependable, like everybody would say out loud, but I've always loved Range Rover. I mean, it's always been something that spoke to me.
So I used to watch I don't want to name out any particular platform because they all do it, but like Car of the Year, that model of entertainment, that video, that series of Car of the Year. And it's been a couple of years, honestly, that I haven't really watched those. Like I used to... maybe it's just the youth and people where like the big drag races of the year or all these big head-to-head kind of shows, or rather, yeah, shows that do the cars. If you were to say car of the year, just as like a broad statement for Nick in 2024, they kind of did it all. Now we're kind of talking to the average consumer-ish, maybe a little bit above, average consumer that's not necessarily going to spend six figures, but they're maybe approaching that. What is it for you?
Man, does it have to be introduced in 24, or are you just
No, no,
saying
no,
like
no.
a car?
Well, actually, this just for this sake of this argument, because I'm going to bring something up that was interesting to me as far as a car of the year take that I want your opinion on. And it could be EV, ICE, doesn't matter.
Here's the thing. I still think C8 Corvette is
Oh
doing
yeah,
it. I still think it's doing it right. You got some depreciation coming into that market. I still think, because we're guys that love sports cars.
yeah,
I think the value you get on that car, I think I still think right now that's a tough thing to beat.
yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really tough sports car to beat. Again, talking about the average person and something that they could own. Again, we can go into, an Aston Martin, a Lamborghini. I mean, that stuff is what it is, but I think it's still hard to say that C8 Corvette. I mean, it's a hell of an experience for the price.
Yeah. There was one of my clients had one in a blue that I'd never seen. It was like a sky
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
bluish
I
color.
love that blue.
Dude, I'd never seen it. It was so cool.
Yeah, that blue color. Chevy does that blue color very well. They
Yeah.
got it in the something similar or exact color scheme. I'm not sure in the CT5 V
Yes, yes,
Blackwing as
yes.
well.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, man, I think I would look at, for me, that CT5V Blackwing. That's probably my favorite car that's out.
Yeah.
Meaning like in that sub, let's call it 125 and under.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun. We got a huge track only about 20 minutes from my house that they have the driving school for those cars.
Oh,
So you
cool.
can go out there and I'm telling you, dude, it is so good. It's so nice. You can get a manual.
Yeah.
You can rip around in those things, but you can also just cruise. So if I really had to say, I mean, that's my favorite car right now.
I
Meaning
don't
like
want to
in
sound
that lower, I'm not trying to say it's lower tier, but I think you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean.
Based
That
off the
more
criteria I
average
had asked,
tier.
right? Not a
Yeah.
million, but it's like 100 grand,
Yeah.
right? So I don't want to sound unoriginal, but I think I have to agree with you. I wasn't even thinking about that car because it's in my saved, like just to kind of keep up with the prices of it. And you're still hovering around that, 110, 115.
Look, I mean, so, one of the things that, I mean, other people talk about this, but if you're in this car world long enough, the game is cheap mileage.
Yeah.
How long can I own this? And what am I going to pay to drive however many miles that I put on it? CT5E Blackwing right now is one of the best deals in the world on cheap mileage because you're basically going to get your money back. You know?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. There used to be some resources as far as creators that used to do content specifically just to that, right? Where they just
Yeah.
take different cars and brands and kind of almost like make guide videos for people. I haven't seen them in a while, maybe just because I haven't looked it up. The algorithm always wins, and if you don't watch something for a week, then it's gone. Like you just don't see it in your feed anymore, which is why you got to like all our videos and comment, even if it's not nice stuff. Like I prefer
Yeah.
it to be nice, but if it's not, still interact with us because if you don't, it's gone.
Yeah.
And then it takes like a week or two after you've seen it again for it to come back. So now we're at a month and the whole thing. So the algorithm always wins. But maybe that's something you could do in the future where, I would want to know and people would want to know what was the phrase you used? Like the game
Cheap
is how many
mileage.
cheap mileage, right? So cheap mileage on all these cars that now, I mean, let's just say they're reaching 5 to 10,000 miles. Somebody said, I'm going to upgrade. You could probably off the bat get cheaper mileage than if you bought it new, obviously. But then there's certain cars that people might want to own that there's a sweet spot for every specific model that people just might not know.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking about C8 Corvette. This is one of the things that's going to hit some Corvette owners pretty hard is that we're seeing those normalize, right? They make a lot of them.
Yeah.
They make them all the time. There's always new ones coming out. That's why there's always a joke when I have people contact me about buying a Corvette or selling their Corvette. I always get the same line. I got this special Corvette. And I'm like, no. There's like two in the history of Corvette that are special. Trust me, it's not that special. Like I wish they were because I love what they stand for.
Yeah.
High-powered, American muscle, pretty well done, pretty reliable, very affordable. But that's kind of what they are, very affordable. I think C8 right now, a lot of people got very cheap mileage or even made some money on their C8s as they kept trading them. That's coming back down to earth. You're seeing that price come down, and again, this is one of the great things for everyone listening. Even if it kind of hurts us, you want this thing to normalize.
Yeah.
Right? You do want it to normalize. I know some of us are going to get caught in the crosshairs of it normalizing, but for the general market, we want the car market to do what it's doing, which is kind of, starting to go down.
Which is same could be said for real estate, which I know you're a big proponent of, but this isn't a financial show. I'm just throwing that out there because it's
Yeah.
true. Like we want that market to also stabilize and come down a bit. But nobody wants to hear that your price of your house needs to go down in value. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, we don't. You can't. You just can't say those kinds of things. You might get banned from TikTok.
We've already been banned. Talking about minivans. Like, what the hell did we do? We said the word China. We said that. We say it that way. You just can't be on there anymore.
Yeah, you can't be on it.
All right. So you brought up Hyundai, or rather Genesis and Hyundai. Throttle House show, a channel I love. They do great content.
They do a good job.
That duo's great. They did, and they're so silly. They're silly guys. I don't know how much they really put behind their thoughts of it. That's not true. I think they believe what they say. But they gave the Porsche ST 911 ST 2 silver, and they gave the gold car of the year for them was the Ioniq 5N.
I know. Come on, man.
Tell me your thoughts, sir.
Well,
I mean,
look,
if we caught arrows, imagine what they're catching.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that's a special Porsche. They did an awesome job. I'm seeing nothing but I have not, in all seriousness, I have not spent time driving that vehicle. But by all accounts, everybody that I trust behind the scenes, guys that I know that have, been in them, that know a lot about Porsche, like they love them. And I can't wait to drive one. Again, no matter what anybody believes, I'm a huge supporter of Porsche. I just think some of the conversation has gotten out of control. But I've seen this Hyundai Ioniq thing across a lot of platforms pretty much the whole year. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that somebody has the wrong opinion because it's all opinion. We're all just saying what we believe. I think they're heinous looking.
I disagree. Keep going.
You like it?
I like it.
Oh, wow. Seriously?
This is also a guy who test drove the Kona N when it came out and said, I might actually buy this thing. So I'm a little crazy.
Wow, they're definitely going to turn the podcast off now. It just doesn't resonate with me. And again, when we're talking about vehicle of the year or what stands out to us, did it stand out to you because it's that much different than everything else or because it's really freaking good? And I think that oftentimes is what I see get mixed up. Even in my own head, when I drive new cars, I'm like, did I like it because it's new or did I actually like it?
Right. Was it the novelty or was it actually awesome?
Yeah. So, again, those are two cars I'm not intimately familiar with at this point, and I don't think I'll be getting in an Ioniq probably in the next 5 years.
Cut to summertime, you're just driving the Vegas Strip in your Ioniq, like, this thing's sweet.
You're like, man, they were so right. But look, we've seen everybody cheer that car on. Yeah. Now, you and I would have a little bit of like you said, we'd have a little bit of a question mark in the back of our head and go, is this all, real opinion or is this all, something else? But I'll take everybody at face value. I haven't been in one. I just can't stand how they look. So it just doesn't speak to me.
I will say this before we move on from the Hyundai brand, which we've talked about a couple of their vehicles, but their Santa Fe, pretty nice little vehicle.
See, here's what. So let me ask you this, and I'd love for listeners to weigh in on this.
Okay.
Don't you think the back looks goofy?
Yes, very much, which is why we drove it just because it had just come out. They look kind of cool. They kind of check some of the quirky boxes that my wife and I were looking for, which is it reminded us of a Flex, which we love the Flex.
It does, yes.
They have an off-road trim one that looked kind of rugged. We are in the hill country, and we don't need necessarily like a Land Cruiser, but it's nice to have some capability. The interior was nice. They drove well, but that back end looked ridiculous. And I hate brake lights that are at the bottom. Like, you can barely see them when you're behind them. Like, what this is dangerous. So the thing I think that doesn't speak to me is it's kind of has these rounded parts for 2/3 of the car, and then you get to the back and it's like dead square. Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. And people are going to say, well, you're a Defender guy from back in the day. Yeah, but the whole thing is square.
Yeah.
The whole thing, it's like looking at a Grenadier, right, that they're building now. The whole thing is square, so it makes sense, which is why I'm a huge Ineos guy. If you haven't been in one, Like, you want to
Oh,
talk
you
about
told me
a
that a while back, and I wasn't too familiar with them.
oh, dude, I love them. So, and we're not seeing all that many. I've only driven two of them. I thought it'd be a vehicle we'd see a ton of. It just haven't really permeated in my world yet. But I love them. But it's all square. The
Hmm.
Santa Fe has like this front that's kind of squarish, but it has rounded off corners, and then you get to the back and it's like dead square.
Yeah, it's
And
like
I'm like,
Pontiac Aztec vibes.
yeah,
It's just like a weird, goofy vehicle.
yeah, but like you said, I kind of like that they did something different.
Yeah.
You and I are going to always cheer that on and go, hey, at least you did your thing. I'm
Yeah.
not going to buy it, but I'm glad you did it. When I see them, they are unique. You drive them around, you drive next to them, you go, that's a unique vehicle. It just 2/3 of the car makes sense, and the back third doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
That's most things in the car world. I feel like one of the commenters who somebody pissed in the cereal, I guess this morning was like, "Who's asking for funky cars?" Because you use that phrase in one of the clips that
Yeah,
we made.
every car enthusiast I know,
Right,
they're
right.
they're asking for funky colors, bring back some funky interiors.
I'm hearing
You
bring back
know,
pop-up headlights from time to time. I'm like, man, I
hey,
wouldn't do
I,
that.
I hear you, but I love the pop up
Oh
headlight.
God.
You didn't love
Oh,
it?
I'm the bad guy because I like the Ionic. Okay.
Yeah. You like the Ionic, and I like pop up headlights. Wait till the comments go crazy on that.
Yeah, I
No,
know, right?
I think when we say funky, it's like do your thing.
Mhm.
As a brand, do something uniquely you.
In the
That's what I
same
think.
breath, though, don't do Jaguar. That's what we're saying.
Yeah,
In the
don't
same
do
breath,
that.
don't do Jaguar.
Don't do that. But no, I think a lot of us are asking. I think more of us are asking. Bring back those funky interiors.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you'd get like an Oldsmobile like Bravada. Do you remember those?
I
and
don't know.
they'd be like a red. It was an SUV. It was like one of the first real like luxury SUVs, whether people will admit that or not. That was kind of like, but they'd be like red with an all red interior.
Was it like fuzzy red or was it leather?
It was leather and look, you had red carpet. It was red on. I mean, dude,
Oh,
100%. I mean, it's totally great. But at
right.
least that's what you say is like you look back fondly at that now because it was funky. It's like, hey, I'm not going to go buy a
No, I remember getting it might have been a Thunderbird, old Thunderbird, something like that, where it looked like it had like bathroom rugs as carpet inside. And I'm like, what
Yeah.
were we doing back in the
Hey,
80s?
bring it back, dude. Just just funk this place up.
God, disgusting. All right. Okay. So we got a lot of other topics to get here in the last quarter of the show. But I want to ask you because you're in manufacturing, you know a lot of people in the space, yourself personally for other endeavors. There was a story here about job losses in Europe's part suppliers are soaring as the market slows. And one of the interesting things that came to mind was, might have been on the podcast or off of it, but you had said how this EV world is going to do a lot for the industry in the sense that it's going to make it hard for things like this to sustain, like jobs and such, because there's no
Yeah.
aftermarket support. There's no extra, like you don't need a whole lot of extra supply chains when it comes to a lot of the EV market. And in this particular article, they're talking about how job losses in European car suppliers has more than doubled in 2024 as the slowdown in the continent's automotive industry hit the fortunes of its manufacturing supply chain. Really interesting, man. Like, there's a lot of decline. I mean, even Michelin, Bosch. There's a lot of companies that are just seeing a decline in
Yeah,
jobs.
I don't think people talk about this, and that's why we especially in the automotive, like again, let's do it. Automotive journalists, quote unquote,
That's
that
us.
have joined the EV, yeah, that have
We're
joined the
journalists.
EV cult and don't want to talk about anything else, and like there's no problems. You have whole businesses that support manufacturers that make you know different things that you don't think about. An electric component that goes in the engine, an alternator that maybe was made by another company. And that, by the way, that was in 10 different units of VW that they own. And the aftermarket support goes on for the next 25 years,
Right.
right? Which keeps that manufacturer going and that, keeps the parts business going. And, if people really look on balance sheets, it's a nice additive business to everybody, as far as manufacturers, then the sub manufacturers. And there's millions, if not billions of dollars in this aftermarket support of just making parts to fix your 2001 Ford F 150, right? Like there's all kinds of parts that need to continue to be made because there was millions of those trucks on the road and they're still on the road. And so even if EVs figure out how to stay on the road for that same length of time, yeah, man, you may have some seat modules, you may have some little tech things, some little bits and pieces, some door panels, but you're not going to have all those engine components, those little things that you don't think about that really sustain a lot of these parts businesses. And what everybody doesn't realize is in some cases, those are small businesses. Not like, $1 million small business, but under $50 million companies that have been making these parts for certain manufacturers for however many years. And we just don't talk about it. And there is going to be a lot of job loss around the parts world. And you're referencing an article that's kind of proving that it's kind of already here.
Yeah, there was a director quoted in one of these manufacturer consultancy agencies saying, if there's no more growth for the European manufacturers, there's also no more growth for their equipment makers, which sums it up perfectly.
Yes. And again, as you go and you defend everything EV, you're not thinking of all of the other stuff in this infrastructure that's going to be damaged. Like, just think about it this way. If we went all EV today, let's just say we wiped every gas engine off think about the infrastructure of gas stations and all of the jobs, the Buc-ee's of the world, that all these people. We don't talk about everything because if you're a cultist, you don't talk about everything. You just talk about the world is, Candyland where I'm at. And it's like, no, man, there's some real repercussions to all of this. I'm sure we're going to figure it all out. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to have the end is near conversation here, but there's repercussions to all of this.
Next week, I'm going to wear my Buc-ee's onesie because you're talking to a Texan here, and Buc-ee's isn't going anywhere. Okay?
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, what's the number one snack? What are they called?
Beaver nuggets.
Beaver nuggets.
Let's go. I'm going to wear my onesie and have some beaver nuggets. I promise you. Done.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right. So last week we talked about cars that were on their way out, weren't coming back, after 2025 or maybe at the last and first quarter of 26. And some of them surprised people that, had some comments on that video about, like the classic Rams. You can't even get a Ram with a Hemi anymore, that kind of thing. Bugatti, Camaro. But there's a couple of cars to anticipate, at least as some of the articles have said. And to me, they're not like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see these. But nonetheless, they are cars that are being called anticipated cars. So I'm going to rattle some off. And if you have any opinions, please stop me. We have the Nissan Leaf to start off the list. Holler, Nissan Leaf fan. Are you a fan?
When it was unique in the moment, I thought, let's check this thing out. No, I don't think that's very unique in 2025.
Kia EV4 and EV5, two electric family cars expanding Kia's EV lineup.
Count me out.
He's not even saying like, okay, moving on. All right, BMW iX3. It's a new model to extend the range capabilities. I don't know anything about BMW EVs, to tell you the truth.
And there's not a lot to know. There's not. It just doesn't do it. That's not what that brand is to me. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's to most people listening to a podcast like ours. You're not real fired up about the new EV from BMW. So I good on them, man. If you buy one and it works, great. But again, it'll probably still have an oil leak somehow.
That's so funny. Just something obscure is going to have an oil leak.
So everybody in BMW world knows I own a BMW. I've owned a lot of BMWs. Okay.
Okay, this is a short list, but I just wanted to get to it anyway. Is it Alpine or Alpine? It's Alpine, right?
What?
Alpine A390. It's a new crossover model.
Oh, for BMW?
No, it's like just the maker themselves. So it's like, yeah.
I thought you were talking about Alpina. I was in the BMW. No, that doesn't excite me. I'm out.
The Hyundai Ioniq 9. If you don't like the 5, you're gonna love the 9.
You're gonna love the 9, though. Wow. So here's the thing. Yeah. We're all saying this right now. Does any of this excite you?
No, man. It's bumming me out, really.
Exactly. I knew it was. I'm like, dude, you might need to stop this segment now. I'm getting bummed out.
No, I saved the best for last, though. The best for last, last but not least, the all-electric Ferrari crossover makes its debut this year.
That hurts me. For those that don't know, I've done a lot of work with Ferrari in my career. It's kind of what put me on the map in the collector world that I'm now in. I couldn't be more.
There's a tear to my eye.
I couldn't be more upset. Because by the way, I drove the SF90, a lot this year. I kind of talked about it. I'm out. This just isn't for me.
Have you seen it, by the way?
What?
The crossover, the Ferrari crossover.
Yeah, I saw. Come on, man. I'm out. I'm just
You
out.
got to be honest. The Ioniq 5 looks better.
No, no,
Yes,
I will
yes,
not say. Hey,
100%.
the horse on it makes it look better than the Ionic. I know people love it. Look, I'm not an Ionic dude. We're gonna have like Ionic fans
I
just
know. I hope so.
lighting
Hey,
me up.
man, 50-50. So please stay for my side and beat up on his side. But no, I saw it. I've only seen the spy shots of it, and I saw I hope the exhaust isn't really going to look like that. It looks like it was sticking out, like the guys that like put the exhaust that literally go up and under the bumper. It looks so silly.
Here's where I'm at. It's I'll say one thing that was exciting is that Lambo came out and they're like, yeah, our EVs aren't going to be out for a very long time.
Meaning never.
Yeah, they're going to try to push that to never. I don't know how successful they'll be, but I don't know, man. Is that what we want out of these brands?
No.
It isn't. I mean, and you look at the depreciation of SF90, Ferrari guys are like, I don't want this. I know. I mean, look, I got a diehard client, and he got rid of his inside of 7 to 10 days. 2 weeks.
Just because of the driving experience, or because he really wasn't into it?
Driving experience. He didn't like how it handled. He didn't like the experience on the interior. Like I said, he just thought there was too much tech. At some point, you drive these vehicles for the overall experience, and there's two special things that I always tell people, especially if they're buying their first Ferrari or talk to a lot of collectors, that what speaks about Ferrari. When you get inside of a Ferrari, it smells like a Ferrari. There's a distinct smell, sort of like when you get inside of a Bentley. The other thing is when you turn the car on, there's an initial experience of a sound of Ferrari or Lambo or whatever. When you start taking that away, I'm not saying that the future isn't bright. I don't know what these car companies are going to do. We all assume we're going to see all kinds of different stuff. But turning on a Lambo and not hearing that Lambo noise, you've taken away the special part of the Lambo, right? And there's only a few things that are special. It's not like there's 1,000 things that are special. Like if you get inside of a Ferrari F430 Spider, there's not 1,000 things that are special. You got a manual gearbox, gated gearbox. You got the noise, and you got the fact that the top comes down. The rest of it, and the car looks, good. There isn't 50 other things. It's really like the engine sounds a certain way, the driving experience a certain way. I can hear the engine when I'm going through the gears. That's what I look at and go, I just don't know how far we can get away from that and still have the success of those brands.
Fair enough, man. All great points. We got to end the show by talking about your new to you daily. And also, in that same vein, you said a lot of the things that you said in that first and initial clip that went viral. At this point, I mean, by the time this drops, it's probably going to be close to 500,000 views, Nick. Can you believe that?
There we go.
Pretty sweet. But you said it before. I want to say Camisa said it. You said it before Doug DeMiro said it, I want to say. And about a lot of the other big personalities, right? I haven't read their comment sections and see if people have been so against what they said, like the way that you've gotten on that particular reel. But it's safe to say that I think most people that know, I'm using quotes here, know what they're talking about, are in agreement with what you said on that SUV. So that leads me to say, you've got a new daily coming. When can you expect it, and what are you trying to do with it?
Transport's picking it up tentatively tomorrow. I imagine it'll be about 7 days to get to me, so maybe I'll get lucky and we'll have it arriving the day we record next week.
Cool.
I'm excited. I haven't really been this excited because we do buy and sell a lot of cars. I'm genuinely excited for this.
Nice.
And like I said, so everybody knows, if I get in it and I drive it around and I'm like, I'm not into this, it's going to go right back up for sale. I mean, that's how I operate, and that's why I buy things the way that I buy them, is because I want to be able to get out of it for no money or make a little bit of money on the other end. And so I'm super excited. But I will say this, Jason Camisa, if you think I torched the new Land Cruiser, you might want to check that video out, because boy, oh boy, did he kind of say what we said, but in a much longer format, and built it all the way up to the end where he just torched that thing for the last 5 minutes of the video. Again, guys, all people that speak highly of the Land Cruiser and what it stands for, nobody's out to get you. Nobody's trying to damage, they're damaging it itself. I mean, did you watch the whole video, right?
No, I haven't. I'm halfway through.
Oh, okay. At the end, when he talks about that engine and he talks about how bad it is, for all the people that are like, yeah, it's the first generation Toyota to figure, it's not about if they'll figure it out. It's about where we are today and where we just took this brand. I mean, what he said was basically a longer version of what we said on our podcast. Luckily, his dropped after ours,
Yeah.
which is
We can always say,
fantastic.
you were first.
Yeah. And I just go, look, man, I mean, he rips apart the interior, talks about how cheap it feels, because again, when we're talking about the history of a vehicle, guys, it matters. It matters. It doesn't matter what we want to think. It matters what the history has been built on, and they took it all away. And I get it. This is a smaller one. This is a light, but that's the point. You took this special thing and you dumbed it way down, and there you are having people just go, I wish this wasn't happening.
You know what's funny too in the world that we're living in? That some people are going to take just that last phrase you just said. You got to appreciate the history of this or what it was before that and X, Y, Z, and they'll take that. And some people are so vehemently against like cool stuff that was because you have to move forward and you have to move into the future and you have to leave those things behind. That just that sentence alone is going to trigger them to say, "Well, you're just an old head," or this, that, and the other. Or you got to move into the future because you genuinely enjoyed the historical impact something like that had.
Yeah, well, I think it's well said. And let me say something else. Remember what manufacturers told everybody, every consumer for years. If you bought a 4-cylinder, it was cheap.
Yeah.
If you bought a 6-cylinder, it was more expensive than the 4-cylinder. And if you bought a V8, it was more expensive than both of them. And then if you bought a V10, then if you bought a V12, that's what they trained the consumer on for 100 years, 75 years. Now they're telling you, don't worry about it. We put a turbocharger in this 4-cylinder. It's the same. Now, everyone can talk about power output, but they're the ones that taught us what they saw as better inside their manufacturing process for decades and decades and decades. A 4-cylinder was cheaper than a 6, was cheaper than an 8, was then cheaper than a V10, right? This is all fact.
Yeah.
As we sit here today, they're trying to get you to believe that you should pay $72,000 or $75,000 for a 4-cylinder that they've never really spent that much money on, that they haven't had that much development on, and just trust that the turbos are going to work. Well,
What they're doing is they're memory holding everything you just explained. And they're doing a really good job of it because this machine that makes the automotive world go around, not just in the US, but globally, is all, essentially in cahoots saying we have to push this initiative forward if we want to be able to roll out all of the things that we say we want to do for the environment or whatever, right? But it's just not true. Like and you don't have to be a real gearhead to understand this. Like you could just be a guy whose dad maybe had a couple trucks in the shop and maybe you weren't necessarily into them, but you observed what you observed when you were a kid. And now we're talking maybe millennials, a little bit, give or take a couple of years. Going forward, the kids are going to be much more easily indoctrinated in the fact that you put a 4-cylinder turbo, which I love 4-cylinder turbos, don't get me wrong, but what Nick just said is not beyond, truth. Like that is 4, 6, 10, the whole thing. That is how cars were perceived to be looked at for as long as I've been alive.
And by the way, we didn't perceive it. They told us that was the case.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people, again, this isn't my opinion. This is what they did for generations.
Yeah.
If you got a 4-cylinder, it was cheap. If you got a 6-cylinder, it was more expensive than the 4. Right? All of these things were how they taught you to be a consumer. And now they're going, we can make more power out of a 4-cylinder. It's like, yeah, I'm not debating that. But again, you kind of told me what the best was for generations. Now you're wanting me to believe you just have all these things ironed out. And they don't have them ironed out. I mean, as you'll see, and I will always support this guy. Go watch Camisa's video. We don't give a lot of free shout outs. I think he's a guy doing it what I consider to be above board and right. And he speaks his mind, which I think has gotten him in some hot water, but I appreciate that he speaks his mind. And go listen to what he says about that Land Cruiser. Period, point blank, end of story.
I know Mr. Camisa could use the extra help, so I'll go ahead and put a link to that video in the description, just to give him a little extra push.
Yeah, you're not doing well enough over there at Haggerty.
Well, did you see, and then we'll wrap on this, Doug's reel that he probably extracted from a longer video where he talked about like the things that he hated about it. It was very concise, right? It was a 4Runner, it was the Lexus, and then you have a Land Rover, or rather the Land Cruiser. The third row issue, the motor's loud, the interior feels cheap. Well, get the 4Runner if you need the third row. And he made this whole thing, this little trifecta of an argument of why you just wouldn't necessarily really want to get the Land Cruiser unless you just really want it for some reason.
Yeah, no, he's made the point that we made, right? Which is, where does it fit in?
Yeah.
You know, and this is, go back to some of our original conversations. When a brand does not have price integrity that makes sense across their lineup, you can assume there's some things going on inside their company that are not going well. And right when they introduced all of this, they have probably one of the biggest engine recalls they've had in, I don't know how long, decades, of the Tundra platform. And it's like, guys, that's all we're really saying is the Land Cruiser today does not fit in the lineup in this nice, neat area that it used to fit into, which then as guys start to get in it, they're like, why would I buy this? I could just buy a 4Runner, or I could just do this, or I could just do that. And, you know, again, you and I have talked about it. Tacoma, 4Runner, Land Cruiser, there's only one odd man out, and it's Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. I mean, as we sit here today.
Right, which is the first week or the second day of 2025, which still sounds weird to say. Got to get used to saying 2025.
Yeah.
We'll see how it all kind of shakes out. But that is it for us. Follow the show at Clutch Culture Pod everywhere across the internet. Interact with us. Leave a comment. Give it a like. Leave a subscription. Give us a subscription, but leave us a comment or a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, the whole thing. I think Nick triggered somebody so bad on Spotify that we got like 1 bad star. So like now we have a 4.5 instead of a 5. Dude, man, like Nick is just breaking hearts out there.
I'm a bad guy.
Follow, by the way, where do you want people to follow you? At HyperClean Nick, at HyperClean
Yeah, HyperClean
Store?
Nick, yeah. Yeah, HyperClean Nick and HyperClean Store, guys, follow me. That's our business.
All right, and maybe Nick's going to have a guest appearance already. People are already asking to have him on shows. Can you believe that? 30 days into the podcast, and he's getting guest requests. I'm like, hey, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah. Hey, you're already hosting a podcast, Robert. They can't have you on everything else. You can't just take over host jobs.
All right, that's okay.
The best host in sports. You're the Jim Nance of car podcasts.
All right, everybody, we'll see you next week.
See you guys.